What's up, everyone? Welcome into a special interview here on One on One. I'm Evan Harkin, joined alongside Jack Warner, and we are extremely excited to be speaking with Rich Cimini today. Rich is ESPN's New York Jets beat reporter and a proud member of the Sachem High Sports Hall of Fame. Rich, after watching the Jets dominate the Giants all week in practice, how are you?
Doing well. I think some Giant fans might take offense to the characterization of dominating, but the Jets, I would say, had the upper hand. Good to be with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to be with you as well. So we'll jump right into things. And Rich, as WFUV's Jets beat reporter myself, I need the inside scoop, and I'm sure Jets fans also want to hear what you think of the Jets training camp so far and preseason. So can Gangrene book their first trip to the playoffs in 13 seasons? Because they look like the real deal with Aaron Rodgers again from viral videos and clips we're all seeing on social media. But what do you think actually being there in person?
I can tell you the for the Jets, the number one thing that came out of training camp in the preseason, and this may sound a little boring, but they didn't have any significant injuries. And so really that is the most important thing for any team. There's such a high injury rate in the NFL, and it's really a battle of attrition. And for the Jets to get through it without any major injuries, I think is a major plus. I think probably the most significant was Michael Carter, their nickelback, with an ankle injury. He's missed a couple of weeks. I think he'll be ready to go against the 49ers. So that really is the number one. I know everyone wants to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Yes, he looked good. He had over 800 practice reps this summer. I think that's more than enough to get ready for the regular season, even though he's not playing in the preseason. So that's the other encouraging thing. He looks good. He's moving well. I think that's about as good as you can hope for.
Now, Rich, I'm definitely not the first person to ask you this question. I'm sure I won't be the last, but one of the biggest stories surrounding the Jets preseason so far has been the absence of Haason Reddick. He requested a trade from the team probably right around 10 days ago. He's still holding out and staying absent from training camp. Have there been any recent updates or any new news regarding the plan around him?
No, it's very quiet. Typically, and I'm not surprised by that because it became very apparent especially when he requested the trade, that he was not going to come to training camp at all. I mean,
Mm.
a lot of players, his money is not guaranteed this year. It's 14.25 million. It is not guaranteed money. And so players in that position say, well, why should I come into training camp and risk a serious injury when my money's not even guaranteed? So for Jet fans out there who are worried about Reddick, I think the key dates are like September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, right around Labor Day weekend. Those are when things typically heat up with holdout players. And the reason being, of course, they want to be on the week one roster because then their money becomes automatically guaranteed and they get paid every week in the NFL. So he's looking at about $800,000 per week. And I'm sure he doesn't want to give that up. But I know he also wants a new contract. So someone's going to have to blink first here. But I think things will stay quiet until, like I said, September. Trust me on this, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That's kind of like your pressure point zone right in those days.
From one important Jets player in Reddick to another, we've seen Garrett Wilson look like prime Devontae Adams alongside Aaron Rodgers all over our Instagram feeds. But being there in person for these practices, you're able to get a glimpse of everyone. So, who's one guy that may be a sleeper on either side of the ball that you think we should have our eyes on this year to make an impact that people wouldn't really have unless they were watching this live?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, and by the way, you're exactly right about Garrett Wilson. He looks outstanding this summer, and so I expect him to have another really good year. Sleeper, let me see. I don't know. Maybe some fans might not consider him a sleeper because he's been getting some publicity. Is the rookie running back Braylon Allen? I think will have a role on this offense. Not a significant role because obviously it's Breece Hall's offense in the backfield, but Allen will get touches, especially in short yardage and goal line situation. He is a bruising back, and I saw him truck one of the Giants safeties on the second level at the linebacker level. He just ran him over in practice the other day. So I think Braylon Allen would be a guy on offense to watch out for. And then on defense, I would say Let me think here. I mean, he started last year, so it's probably not a sleeper. I think Tony Adams is really looking at a possible breakout year. He's really come into his own. I think he's going to make more plays from the safety position this year.
Aside from losing Aaron Rodgers last season, amongst the multiple kind of issues the Jets ran into, one of the biggest ones was discipline and, penalties, a lot of penalties, a lot of giving up yards from foolish penalties. I think they finished the 2023 season with the most penalties in the league and for the most amount of total yards in the league. Has eliminating those penalties and those kind of mistakes, has that been any sort of focal point for Robert Salah and his coaching staff? And have you seen as much of that have you seen that issue continue to plague them during practice this season, or have they seemed to be more disciplined and in sync with Rodgers?
It's a really good question. You're accurate on your facts. They led the league in penalties. I also think they may have led the league in pre-snap penalties, which is the ones that drive coaches crazy. Coaches they hate the pre-snap and the post-snap penalties. And the Jets had all of the above last year. They had too many of all of those categories. And the weird thing is, I don't know if they put an extra emphasis on it this summer. They did not have officials at practice this summer, only for the joint practices, and and that was it. And typically in years past, the Jets had officials at practice every day. They would hire local officials, like high school refs, to come in, and pay them and do their practices and call it like a game. But the Jets didn't have it this year. I never got a good reason why. There was some speculation that maybe Woody Johnson wanted to cut it out of the budget. I don't know if that's the reason or not, but Robert Salah did not have a real great reason when I asked him that question. So I don't think they've put a huge emphasis on penalties, which is a little bit concerning.
Yeah, and on the defensive side of the ball, New York's record to finish the season last year didn't really reflect their efficiency on defense. They finished second in the league in passing yards and third in the league in yards allowed per game, and some publications even call them the best defense in the league. So, what you've seen at camp and the beginning of preseason, is it safe to say we should keep these same expectations for this year's D?
From talking to players, they absolutely expect to be just as good and maybe better. They finished third in yards allowed. I think it was fifth the previous year. So this is a really good defense. I think they have 8 out of their 11 starters have been with the team at least 2 years. And so that is rare continuity in the way the NFL is nowadays with all the moving parts. So they have no excuse for we're learning the system. That doesn't cut it. I mean, these guys have been around for a while. I think they have outstanding blue chip players at every level of the defense. Quinnen Williams, on the front with Mosley and Quincy Williams at linebacker, and then Sauce Gardner on the next level, on the back end. So outstanding players at every level. I think they'll be a top 5 defense again. The one concern right now is the defensive line depth with no Haason Reddick in there. I think Michael Clemens is not a starting player, but he could be one without Reddick in there. Will McDonald he's got some pass rush ability, but he's very inconsistent and he's undersized. I think he'll be exploited in the running game. So I think they need to get Reddick in camp. So that would be my concern, is just they don't have the defensive line depth that they've had in past years.
And lastly, to wrap this all up, we've seen some ups, but considerably more downs for the Jets during Robert Salah's tenure as head coach. He's currently sitting on an 18-33 career record as the coach of the team. The team hasn't, made the playoffs in around 13 years, haven't won the division since 2002. So would you consider this to be a very high leverage or make or break year for him as coach of this team?
No question. I mean, 13 years. I mean, it's not all him, obviously, but the last 3 years, they really haven't even sniffed the playoffs. And yeah, there's no question. Woody Johnson, the owner, is I think 76 or 77 years old. He's running out of patience. He wants to see a championship here. If they do not make the playoffs, I could absolutely see a change being made. I think the only reason that Salah and Nathaniel Hackett and even Joe Douglas survived last year was just because of the Aaron Rodgers factor. Rodgers wanted all those guys back because he didn't want to have to start over again with a new staff. So, you know, somewhat selfish motivation there by Rodgers, but so they're all back. And I'm actually glad they got another chance because last year was a really difficult way to evaluate them. They lost their quarterback on the fourth play of the year. I don't know if another team in the league could survive something like that. And the Jets managed to get 7 wins, which is obviously not close enough to, to make a playoff run. But so yeah, this is do or die for Robert Salah. There will be no excuses. If now if they go 10-7 and they miss the playoffs on a tiebreaker, is he gone? Well, then it's a little more complicated. But if they go under 500, he's absolutely gone.
Well, we'd love to chat with Rich Cimini all afternoon, but that's going to do it from us. I'm Evan Harkin saying so long from Jack Warner and Rich Cimini. Stick with WFUV and Rich all season to stay locked into the Jets from first snaps to final whistles. And don't go anywhere during this short break. We'll be right back with more one-on-one.